Here we are live on It's My Friday. I am Scott Stanfield. I am the modern longevitarian. And you probably wonder what It's My Friday stands for, but you probably don't, because you probably work in the restaurant industry, food service, hospitality somehow, and probably hear every day that you work that somebody says, It's My Friday. And it's pretty cool because, Fridays are a different day. Friday has more balance than any other day of the week. We have this, we're going to get some work done, and we're also going to have fun tonight. We're going to stay up a little bit later. We're going to, we're going to really have a cool day. So I really love Fridays because it's just a mindset shift. And here's a question. What if every day was a Friday? Every single day. What if every day was a Friday? How cool would that be? Now, today's guest is going to be absolutely amazing. We've actually recorded 2 podcasts. One's live in the world, and we've done Zoom networking meetings together. We talked and texted and done all these crazy things and corresponded on LinkedIn. And so today is we're not going to review all of those things that we've done and put in the world already, but we are going to dig into some other stuff. And so I want to read this quote here, Anthony Bourdain quote from Kitchen Confidential, and then we'll get Katie, executive chef Katie Horne on. So here we go. So who the hell exactly are these guys, these boys and girls in the trenches? You might get the impression that from the specifics of my less than stellar career that all the line cooks are whacked out moral degenerates, dope fiends, refugees, a thuggish assortment of drunks, sneak thieves, sluts, and psychopaths. You wouldn't be too far off base. The business, as respected 3-star chef Scott Bryan explains it, attracts fringe elements, people from whom something in their lives has gone terribly wrong. Maybe they didn't make it through high school. Maybe they're running away from something, be it an ex-wife, a rotten family history, trouble with the law, a squalid third world backwater with no opportunity for advancement. Or maybe, like me, they just like it here. So restaurants have been a big part of my life for almost 30 years, and I really love it. Love the people. Love the fact that you can start as a dishwasher like I did and work your way up to be a director of food and beverage at a 4-star hotel just years later. But no, that's what it is. So, and you know what? The most important thing for your health is sleep. So I'm just going to make this short. This is my shameless plug. So modernlongevitarian.com/sleep. And you can download, just for the price of your email, temporarily, a book on how to have an outstanding landing and get the sleep of your dreams. So without any further ado, we're going to bring Katie on here, and then we're going to get started. So there we go. Katie.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Well, it's the first time on the live show, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've recorded 2 podcasts, one for the Restaurant GM podcast, one for Modern Longevitarian. I've only put the Modern Longevitarian in the world. And if people want to go back and listen to that, we really talk about plant-based, vegan eating, things like that. You being from Wisconsin, that type of stuff, and the struggles of stop eating cheese, right? Yeah.
Struggle's real. Struggle's real.
Right? And that's episode 8 of the Modern Longevitarian podcast. If anybody wants to go look that up wherever you listen to podcasts, right? And do that. But so tell me what's up. What's going on with you?
Oh man, just surviving this COVID stuff. So it's so crazy. I live in Texas. You live in Utah, and it's crazy when we talk just the polarity of where we live and what's it like to be around here. And in Texas, we just went up to 75% in restaurants, and some of them aren't even going that high. Some of them are staying at the 50%, and kids going back to school. The election coming up. Things are crazy, man. It's a crazy world we live in right now.
It really is. Hey, I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'm drinking out of my Starbucks Texas cup in your honor today.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I told my son this morning, I said, hey, I'm interviewing a chef from Texas this morning on the show. He's like, oh, that's really cool. And he's like, and I'm like, she's a vegan. He goes, that's got to be against the law, right?
Yeah, yeah. Once you leave the city, it's far and few between.
I mean, I've been to, Texas barbecue pits in around Dallas, and I mean, if you're on the carnivore diet, there's not a better place to live, I don't think, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, it's everywhere.
yeah, it is. It's pretty wild, and so it's really cool. So let's do this. Let's give you an abbreviated version of your background. I mean, your CIA, right? And graduate chef. So did I rehash the whole thing, but just abbreviated one for people watching now, and then I've got some ideas for the show, right? So we're gonna go for there.
Oh, I'm excited. It's always an interesting conversation with you and I. So,
Yeah.
so I graduated CIA. I've been an executive chef for about 10 years. I've been a culinary director. I have been an interim GM when needed to be, but I always say I like to stay on the tile floor. So that's where my home is. I am a vegan. I've been vegan for just over 3 years now. And it's not like every day I eat salad. I think that's a big misconception. When I'm dining out and there's cheese in something, like I'm okay with it. I try to balance the chef in me with like the diet in me at the same time. And it's funny as a chef, I used to hate when vegans came in because you'd buy special stuff, 86 things. I'm like, why would anyone go vegan? And the line I always say is I know too much. And I know, I'm famous for that now, but so that's kind of my background. I love all things food and hospitality. And I think that, I've really found my place in the hospitality industry, particularly in restaurants, just really changing the culture and turning it around. When you were talking about the quote with Anthony Bourdain, a lot of those people need help. A lot of those people need counseling and therapy and a good role model and, someone to kind of keep them in a positive direction. And it's hard to do that when, you're working for someone that came up from the bottom, really started as a dishwasher and has worked their way up to executive chef or sous chef or owner or GM or whatever it would be. Just really trying to be that positive influence and change the culture of the industry one step at a time.
Yeah, when I first came up with the idea for the GM coach, I said my whole goal is to save the restaurant industry from itself, right? Satan's got his hand on the throat of the restaurant industry, maybe his boot, right? Just got his boot, and you're down, right? And it's just like holding, because you can get caught up in this, like, where are we going drinking tonight, or, who's sleeping with who, or, all the sex, drugs, rock and roll. I've had, like underage hostesses, have, clients buy or guests buy her shot at the bar, hitting on her, right? I've had, moms show up because her daughter is a host, bought a drug in the coat closet, and from another host, right? And just, you've had all those things going on. And so, of course, I've done, in the beginning, did my fair share of stuff, but when I started taking it seriously, it was just like, it's like, okay, how can you be professional? How can you do this? And it's really a cool thing. And so, yeah, it's so great, man. This is going to be so awesome. All right. So the first thing is, I don't know if you remember a couple months ago, but I started doing this thing, ask the GM coach a question, right? And I sent you this question from a lady that sent this in, and I'm going to read her question and then your answer you sent me, because I was going to do a video and do this series of ask the GM coach. And so I'm going to do that. We can talk about that for a minute, and then we can move on to other ideas. We can go from there. The question was, how can a strong personality female compete in a male dominant industry? I'm currently an AGM with a company that does not have a lot of female GMs, 3 out of 46, right? How do I build myself up when they do not? Now, I loved your answer, and I'm gonna read it for you, and then we can expand on that, right? Because I'm gonna give it word for word. And the first thing I would do is express your intent. If you want to be a GM, let it be known. If your eventual goal is to be a director of ops, let it be known. Sit down with your GM and or their boss and ask for a development plan. Have them give you clear steps and explain the path to get where you want to be. There is no shame in wanting something more. Even if you're a woman, if they tell you that you don't have what it takes, leave. Look for a new job, because that type of thinking on their part can hinder your progress. You want to be in a company that not only allows for growth, but encourages and nurtures it as well. The only thing that will get a woman in managerial roles is time and perseverance. End quote. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add or subtract or say about that?
You know what? I definitely agree with my own advice. One thing I remember answering that question, and I talked to my husband about my response, and I was like, I really like this one, and he kind of countered back at me with, why would she leave that job? And what I explained to him was, this woman is talented. She clearly has goals. She clearly wants to move up in the world, and you can beat down the door of a company for a very long time before the door will open. And in some cases, that's going to be okay. But if you have to constantly prove your worth, constantly prove your knowledge, and constantly live up to what someone else feels your ideal is, you're not going to be in a healthy job, and you're not going to have a healthy relationship with that job. So take your talent where it's wanted and where it's needed. There's, the restaurant industry as a whole is very transient. It's much more transient than it was before. When you and I were starting out in the industry, Scott, it wasn't uncommon to have servers and wait staff that were in their 40s and 50s about to retire, sometimes even in their 60s, and then they would be fine dining servers for their career. It was a career job. And now it's kind of shifted away from that. And there's still, we call them lifers. There's still servers for life in there, but it's moved away from that, and it's much younger. It's much less experienced, and it's much less, willing to stay the course. So switching jobs in restaurants, when I'm looking at applicants, are they someone that's leaving after 8 months? Or are they someone that has maxed out their potential and they're leaving in 3 to 5 years? That 3 to 5 year mark shows me that they are fast moving. They like to move up their ranks, and I kind of see their progression through it. Did they start as a line cook and ended up as a sous chef, and maybe there just wasn't a position open? But really just finding a right place for you has no shame in the restaurant industry. There are a million restaurants. There are a million jobs out there. I know there's more, but so finding what works for you is fine. The old adage that, you stay in the same job for 20, 30 years is no longer the best advice, at least in our profession and our careers, because, if you're working in, we'll just say, an Italian restaurant for 20 years, you won't be exposed to the same growth and development as if you were to go to a French restaurant, and then an Italian restaurant, and then a steakhouse, and then a quick service restaurant or something. So in order to get that experience and to build your portfolio, you almost have to, I hate to say the word job hop, but you have to go out and get different experiences. And when you're trying to move up in the world, there is no sense in waiting for a job that may not be offered to you because of your sex or your creed or whatever it would be. Just as being a woman, if my job no longer serves me, I can no longer serve my job. And I think it's important to note that there are so many great companies out there that are actively seeking, women and minorities to fill managerial roles and fill any roles that they have available because of the diversity. Everyone wants to have a diverse cast and things like that. But as far as staying in a job to get that promotion, to wait for it, when you've been waiting too long, like you just know.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you don't get something and you just bounce out, but dive into why you didn't get it. Was this an equal partnership, or was this they just don't believe in you? Never be afraid to, especially women in the industry, never be afraid to go find something better.
Right. First of all, I want to say it's a great question, right? To ask, right? And your answer is spot on for male or female, right?
Yeah.
You want your intentions to be known, right? You definitely want to, and if you're looking to grow, to do that. And, both my dad worked at his last job before he retired, 32 years. My mom worked at a job for 28 years and took early retirement. I haven't held a job other than my first one more than 6 years. And I think the first 2 years of that were an hour and a half a day, right? I'd get out of high school and I'd be there by 3:30 and I'd work till 5 and it was over, right? And I was making minimum wage, $3 and a nickel an hour. This is in the, late 80s. I graduated in 1990, right? And so my paycheck was $20, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like, and I'd go Friday night and I'd drop it all in the pole position in the arcade, right?
Yeah.
Because I raced go-karts, right? And we would go ride pole position and do that. But back to what you're talking about. So my point is this, right? Is every restaurant job I've had has been, except one, two, counting the furlough in March, right? But my, ones that I've had control over has been 3 to 4.5 years, right? And I've purposely, like I won't leave a place if I have a choice, right? In less than 3 years, right? And not having a choice means the culture is really bad, right? And I took a job, and the culture did not work. It was a pay raise. The next job I took was a pay cut to get out of that culture. So I knew there was nothing in there for me. It was just a paycheck, right? There was nothing I could do to fix it. There was nothing I could do other than take care of the team under me. Now let's talk about, because I would imagine, and I think actually the stat is 70% of restaurant managers are men, right? And I probably see even more in chef, right?
In 2017, there was a study done about women chefs in the United States. 7% of chefs in the United States were women in 2017. I was one of 7%.
Well, and this is the interesting thing to say women's places in the kitchen, but yet 93% of the chefs are men, right? So I don't even get that. It doesn't even make any sense, right? At all, right?
A woman's place in the kitchen is a woman's place being a homemaker.
Right. But anyway, let me say this. And this is coming from someone who's basically been a GM almost his entire career, right? And that's just for me. And through my study on leadership, I firmly believe that women have better ability to be an amazing leader than a man does, right?
I just kind of appreciate that.
Yeah. And this is from someone who's been a GM. It's a struggle for me. Like, I didn't connect with my team when they had problems with their family until I had kids, right? Yeah. And I understood it. I needed experience in my life to do that. But a woman naturally, has that empathy and that sympathy and that understanding and that, hey, this is my family and I'm going to build this, and they want connection. Men don't want connection so much. They want solitude and, hey, we're going to climb this mountain, right? And we're going to put our flag in the ground, and then tomorrow we're going to climb another mountain, put a flag in the ground, right? And we're going to continue this march. And if you're not, if you're not on board, get off the bus, right? Just get, it's like, I'll find somebody else. I'm going to beat you down just to build you back up, and all that old stuff, right? That's happening. Women don't think that way, right? Now, here's the trap that a female can step into and get caught in, is that in an effort to fit into this man's world, they can become classified as a bitch, right? And I'm not saying, that in a negative way, but they feel like they have to be super harder on their team and the people around them than the other men they're around to get credibility. And that's not true, right? You're shaking your head, so go ahead. I think I might have hit something here.
So how many times I've been called a bitch in the industry? I don't even know. I mean, I lost count at like 18. Age 18, not 18 times. So right. We touched on a couple things. One, I think that because the culture of the staff has changed in the industry, we need much more of that woman leadership. We need the nurturing. We need the building people up thing. 100 years ago, when you had a Scoffier, I mean, it was, do or be killed. Like, you led blindly, you followed blindly. It didn't matter. It was authoritarian type of leadership. And now you can't get away with that because we have HR departments and OSHA and laws to protect people. So and I think that,
right?
Yeah. And me too. Yep. Right. and social media and all these things. So, I remember in 2004, 2003, something like that, the chef I worked for, like, injured me, threw steaming hot sheet pans at me because I'd burned croissants. If I were to do that now, I would be arrested for assault. It's a different level. And so just going through the old school chef system that we did, and today it's not as prevalent, but back then in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, it really was. There's just such a shift in culture and shift in demographics for the staffing that you have to adapt to it. As far as being a bitch goes, it's like the default insult, I guess. And there's two different things. If a man is yelling at me, I'm like, okay, he's yelling at me. But if a woman yells at me, it's like she's just being mean. Because women, even, you touched upon it, women are nurturing, we're empathetic. So when we go into that zone of having to raise our voice or be stern or be strict, it's immediately met with backlash because of this culture that we have built for ourselves in the restaurant industry. And I think that it has not done women any favors that it continues to perpetuate at such a high level. I am not a bitch. I'm a very nice person. I'm a pretty calm leader. It takes a lot for me to really raise my voice and get upset. But at the same time, I definitely, I've been called a bitch many times. And again, like I don't even remember how many times. But when you do that to someone and you call them that name, being called a bitch is the equivalent of the N-word. It is equivalent to calling a homosexual the F word. Like, it is so degrading to women, and we're so used to it that most of the time we're like, oh, all right, whatever, next. But subconsciously, it takes a toll on you. And you are always, as a woman, I am always cognizant of how I talk to people because I don't want to get that label.
Right. I've worked with some side by side with amazing GMs. I've been trained by the female, was trained by an amazing female GM at my prior job. She got promoted to regional, to be my regional, before I got furloughed. And the VP of that company, VP of operations of that company was female, super strong ladies. And, when needed, they had compassion and they had understanding and nurturing things. But their expectations were high, as it would be, I think, if there was a man in those positions, right? Those type of things. And so finding that balance is super, super important. Have I been called bad names for being hard on people? Yes. Right. Was I hard on people? Earlier in my career, I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to negotiate. I didn't know any of those things. So if you worked for me early in my career, I'm sorry. I really am. I apologize from the bottom of my heart because, I was expecting a lot from people, and I didn't know because all I knew was the way I was raised. Right. I asked you to do it, and why haven't you done it yet? All right. But I've learned to have a different way of communication and do that. And so as I progressed through my career, as my emotional intelligence score went up, as I learned about that, as I learned how to communicate with people and learn negotiation skills and learn how to soften my voice and those type of things, it changed over time. Right. And I think that, like I said, women have an advantage, and just be you, right. And tap into the things that allow you to be successful, and you have different skills and different talents than a male counterpart will, and go with that is really what it is. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. All right. Do you remember, you reached out to me, I believe is how this went, to be on the Restaurant GM podcast, I believe. Do you remember what topic did you want to talk about? I'll give you a hint. I'm a GM, right? By trade, you're an executive chef. You want to talk about the relationship between a GM and executive chef, right?
Yep. And the importance of it being fluid and Oh, that's crazy. That's so long ago.
Things I think of when I'm meditating, right? They come to me like, oh, what am I going to talk to Katie about? Oh, she reached out about this, right? It's like, so that's what I love about having this 10 a.m. for me is 10 a.m. show is that it forces me to get up. It's almost like having to be at the restaurant by 10 a.m., right? So I get up and I do breathing exercises, make a cup of coffee, do breathing exercises, meditate, take a cold shower, right? I get to think about things I need to get done in a very quick time, and I can move on to, from there, right? So this has been really cool. Here's the ideas that I had so that's one of them. And then something that's really popping up, I'm seeing this a lot on LinkedIn here lately, which is the difference between company strategy and company culture and which one wins.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, so many good topics.
And then another one came up, because you're vegan and I'm the modern longevitarian, right? Is how to be healthy and manage a restaurant at the same time, right? So those are the things, right? Because I know that when you just recently started really focusing on going through a body transformation and losing weight and doing those type of things, well, it's going to be guest choice. Those are 3 topics, and you get to pick, and we'll go from there. We'll just
gosh,
wax on, right?
Let's start from the bottom. Let's go how to have a healthy lifestyle in the restaurant industry, because I have gone from both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, me too. I've lost 40 pounds twice, right? First time I didn't learn my lesson, right? So I've kept it off for the last 8.5 years, and you have had very similar experiences. Like, how can you balance being a chef and being a vegan, right? You're cooking chicken, things like that. And how can I be keto and be a GM and help evaluate dessert menus or taste new desserts or that chefs may come up with, things like that. So let's talk about how, what do you think about how to live a healthy life managing a restaurant?
So what I've learned is that being healthy is 90% mental, 10% physical. You can work out 2 hours a day, burning 1,000 calories, but if you eat your way through your night, you're never going to get healthy. People gain weight in restaurants for a number of reasons. Let's talk about stress. It is extremely stressful in the restaurant industry. I feel like there are a couple industries I think everyone needs to have a job in for 6 months before they're allowed to graduate to life: retail, healthcare, customer service, hospitality. There's a bunch of them, right? So with being healthy, you have to have a good mental fortitude. So it's 8:30 on a Saturday. Your restaurant had 300 seats, 350 seats, something like that. I've had restaurants that go up to 500 seats. I think the smallest one I ever did was 80 seats. So when you're pumping out that much food at that quick of a pace and having to, either cook food or work the pass, which is where you're kind of organizing all the plates, making sure they're going out to the right table. That's my favorite position to be in, because I literally equate it to solving a puzzle every 10 seconds. You look at the ticket, this person's getting this, you look down at the food, organize it, and go. And you just get your rhythm. And then all of a sudden a plate comes back because a medium steak was cooked so well done, or it was cooked mid-rare, or whatever it would be. And you have to pivot and be able to solve the problem without losing your momentum. And what chemical in your body raises as stress raises? Cortisol. This is science. This isn't fake news. This is science. And when you look at chefs, the high metabolism chefs have that very gaunt, sunken eyes, very skinny. The lower metabolism chefs have belly fat. And that's because of the level of cortisol in our bodies. So to fight that off, you have to fight off stress. And when you're surrounded, it's like Pigpen from Peanuts, just surrounded by stress everywhere you go. It's hard to step away from that and be able to handle that. So I thoroughly encourage my team members to get into counseling, meditate, do yoga, do something else other than the restaurant industry. Because when you have a bad day, what do you want to do when you get home? Have a beer, have a glass of wine, have a scotch, just relax. And when you're in the restaurant industry and you're surrounded by people in similar situations, what do you always want to do after work? Go next door and have a beer, right?
Right.
And then you have that one beer and you're like, okay, now I'm relaxed. Now I'm going to enjoy my next one. And then you have 2 beers, and then you have 3 beers. And that's really the addiction cycle of the restaurant industry. You're self-soothing, you're self-medicating a horrible, horrible level of stress. And I don't know any restaurant that I've ever worked in, regardless of company culture, that is not extremely stressful. It is just a high stress environment. And I think that, as the cycle perpetuates, your health decreases because you're there. It's not like chefs don't work 40 hours a week, guys. Chefs work like 60, 70, sometimes 80. When you're opening a restaurant, geez, we were clocking like 90 to 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
6 a.m. to midnight, not even the blink of an eye, just gone.
Yeah.
So it screws with your chemical composition in your body, and having to fight that it's an uphill battle. It's going uphill in barefoot on grease. You can't ever reach the top of it. So I think that staying healthy in the industry, the first part of it is you got to get your mind right. Making sure you eat breakfast before you get into your shift, or lunch, or whatever it would be, making sure that you're, making healthy choices. I don't know anybody in the industry that doesn't have bread service that doesn't just nosh on bread service all night, because you can't eat between the hours of, we'll say, 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. And who eats dinner at 4 o'clock if you're under the age of 70?
Right.
So by the time I get home at 10 o'clock, I'm ravenous. The last time I ate was after lunch service at 2. And so by design, we're feeding you guys. There's nobody feeding us. So that also plays a part in it, just the late night binge eating. And when you get to be, 30-ish, 30, 35-ish, your metabolism changes. When you hit 40, your metabolism goes down even more. And so the people that you see that are older in the restaurant industry are just really fighting a losing battle with it. So I think one of the things that we can do in the restaurant industry is just really fix that culture.
Just amazing. All right. So I'm going to tag on a couple of things you said here, right?
Let's roll, Scott.
Right,
let's roll.
I took notes, right? I took notes so I could do this. All right. First of all, of my of the 8 pillars of being a modern longevitarian, right? And all this came out of me trying to live the healthiest life, inspired by my parents getting cancer, me being overweight twice. All right. So that's where these things came from. Number one is mindset. It all starts with mindset is everything. Bruce Lee said, the body will follow the mind.
Yep.
Arnold Schwarzenegger said, the body will follow the mind. Okay, well, what's the mind? Okay, this. Anyway, you said this. The first thing is you said cortisol. Dr. Jason Fung wrote in the book Obesity Code about the correlation between cortisol and insulin. Now, what people may not know, and this is just as science, straight up science, okay? Your insulin spikes for about 4 different reasons. One is high glycemic foods. You just talked about bread service, pasta, right? Any of those sugar drinks, sodas, any of those type of things are going to spike your insulin. Stress spikes your insulin. Lack of sleep spikes your insulin. All right. Those things. It takes 13 hours for that insulin spike to go back down to the point to where the signal switches. Now, what's the signal when insulin spikes? Insulin says store fat. All right. No matter what you do. Okay. 13 hours later is when you're going to get the signal that said it's okay to burn fat. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing this, right? If you're, and think about this cycle that you just really laid out, I'm going to lay this out, right? You're stressed out during service. So let's say this, because you're tired, you had a cup of coffee just before dinner service. Okay.
Do you want me to whiteboard this, Scott? I could whiteboard this.
We can
let's do it.
Right? Yeah, let's do it. Right. So you have this, right? You have this happening, right? You're going to have caffeine, right? Caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours. All right. So let's say you have that shot of espresso, right? So you have that at 6 o'clock, right before service, right? And you're going to try to go to bed at midnight, 6 hours later, right? Or 5, that's 7 hours later. That's still going through your system, right? You're not going to get a good night's sleep, right? Nope. You've also spiked your cortisol and your insulin, right? By stress, and you've had bread service or some sort of food or any of those type of things, right? You've also, if you've had beer, you spiked your insulin because you've got, carbs, right? Yeah. Also, alcohol, just one drink inhibits. This is a Finnish study they did on 4,098 men and women. One drink inhibits sleep. Moderate drinking inhibits sleep by 24%, and heavy drinking inhibits sleep by over 34%, right?
Yes.
So you drink too much and too late, you're not sleeping good. All right. Those things are happening, right? Your body's not burning fat. You're storing fat. No matter how much you move, no matter what, all those things are happening. Just from this alone, this is happening. So you wake up the next morning, you've eaten too late, you've had too much caffeine, you've had some alcohol, right? You are dehydrated, right?
Yeah.
You're dehydrated because all that pulls away from your net hydration, right? Then on top of that, you have coffee in the morning, right? Or some sort
Yep.
of caffeine, a Red Bull caffeine
Yep.
or whatever, right?
More caffeine.
More caffeine. Now you're more dehydrated. And now because of lack of sleep, your body's craving salty, sugary, fatty foods, right?
Yep.
Your ghrelin hormone is turned on, which is the eat hormone, right? And your leptin, which is the appetite suppressant hormone, is turned off, right? So you're dehydrated, you're caffeinated, your digestive system is ignited from the caffeine, your hunger hormone's turned on, your other leptin is turned off, right? And all these things are happening, and you're trying to like get started on the next shift the next day, right? So you got all that stuff going on, and it's basically this. And insulin is still not gone down from when you spiked it last, which is right before you went to bed because you had something to eat, right? So you're sleep deprived. And you probably checked your social media, right, since you gotten off work, right? And your blue lights, which suppresses melatonin production, which doesn't get deep asleep. So all these things are happening, right? And then you try to do it all again the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, right? It's pretty wild. What else did I write? Take notes on: dehydrated, losing sleep, caffeine, food.
So hold on, I wanna touch on what you just said because I think it's really important. I call it the chemical care cycle. And what that means is you are no longer caring for your body naturally, you're caring for it via chemicals. And what I mean by that is, like you said, that 6 p.m. espresso shot. I've done it, you've done it. That's chemically caring for something that you need. What does your body really want? It wants to sleep. It needs to decompress, but you can't because you got to do your job. So what you end up doing is you chemically care for that problem, then you spike your blood sugar. You're hungry at the end of the day, and you're hungry because you just worked and didn't eat at the right time. So you have to chemically care for that, and you have to eat, and you're stressed out. So rather than yoga or meditation or any other reading or taking a walk, what do? You have a beer, and then you have another one. And then you want to go to bed because you're exhausted. You're mentally exhausted, you're emotionally exhausted, and you're physically exhausted. Then you go to bed, but you can't get a good night's sleep because, like you just said, all of your insulin is spiked. Then you wake up the next morning, groggy, dehydrated, all that stuff. What do? Pound some coffee. Maybe you pound a Pedialyte if you're hungover, which is terrible for you. And then you go and you could do it all over again. Right. You never once took care of your body.
Right. God forbid you take an Advil or something like that to make the headache go away and all those things, right? You start putting other chemicals. By the way, I want to pause 1 second. My friend, longtime friend, Tim Glowacki, I just got your message. He's watching now. So thanks for watching, and hope to have you as a guest here soon, right? I've known Tim. He's back in South Carolina for, I just got chills. I've known Tim for over 20 years, right? So super cool guy. And so anyway, but here's the thing, right? Now we've talked about all the things that are going wrong, right? All the things we're doing wrong. Let's talk about how you've managed that, and I'll talk about how I fixed that, right? And by the way, this is compounded with a clopin, right? The minute that you do a close open, this is like even makes it exponentially worse because you got even less sleep, right? And less time for yourself, right? And so let's you talk about the solutions you did, and I'll talk about my solutions, and we'll kind of like wrap on that for a minute.
First one was taking out the drinking. That was a big thing. In my 20s, I remember I worked for a chef, and I'm not going to say who it was, but it was part of the restaurant culture and the company culture to drink during the day. And I took notice one day. I didn't realize I was constantly hungover because it just becomes your normal, right? So one day I counted the number of shots. It was 18 from 10 a.m. 10 a.m. to like midnight, I think.
Oh gosh.
And I didn't partake in all of the 18 shots, but literally it was walk over, take a shot, go back to your job all day. And this is 15, 20 years ago. So this is not anything going on right now.
The insurance
But
companies got smart and said managers can't drink while they're working, right? And
yeah, no
that's
glass
kind
in
of
the
like,
kitchen.
they kind of like stopped it a little bit, right?
Yeah,
So
there's a famous chicken place in Texas. I don't even know if it's still around. It's called Max's Wine Dive, and you can buy the kitchen a bucket of beers. And I always hated that. So first step for me in my mid 20s was I lowered my drinking. I still drink. I'm a much bigger lightweight than I am now. But the one thing is it really, I got better sleep. I wasn't drinking my calories and I wasn't as dehydrated. So with the swapping out of my liquids, I started drinking a lot more water. I eliminated sodas, anything that was just not beneficial to my body. I would say the only thing I drink now is water, coffee, and unsweetened iced tea and my pre-workout, but whatever on that. You know, that was like step one. And so I encourage anyone out there in the restaurant industry, like, please lower your drinking. It is the easiest thing and the hardest thing you will ever do, but it's so worth it. The next thing I did is I put myself as a priority. I no longer did clopens. I no longer, I called it volunteer work. Anything after about 10 hours, I consider volunteer work. I choose to stay there to help out. And if I work a 12 or 13-hour day, the next day I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. So really having to hold yourself accountable in an industry that is known for lack of accountability is very difficult. But you have to be able to really put yourself first, and you have to really be able to right those wrongs. And then the last thing was nutrition and fitness, of course. But I'll be the first to say it's incredibly difficult to work out and then be on your feet for 10, 11, 12 hours a day with the amount of stress that you have to handle in the restaurant industry. Your back hurts. You're wearing an apron. Your neck is constantly being pulled down. You're hunched over all day chopping vegetables. You are walking around the kitchen and moving and lifting heavy stuff. 50-pound bags of flour are a real thing. When you're putting an order away, you might be putting away, I think one time I put away like 3,000 pounds worth of product. So when you have that physical toll on your body, it's incredibly difficult to get in a proper workout. So you have to figure out other ways to get that fitness in. And for me, that was stretching and yoga. That made a huge, huge difference.
Well, there's so many things in that. Let's just hit on this for a second, because the blue zones, which are the 5 areas of the world that have the highest per capita population of people who are over 100 years old. Okay, they don't have none of them have any. They don't exercise, right? They move, right? Mm-hmm. So if your job, like I've had to put away a truck that had 80-pound, master cases of beef, right?
Yep.
Onto a shelf that is eye level, right? So why do I can say that I work out for that, right? But that could be your workout, is doing all of those things. So having time to actually do a workout is not needed when you're moving so much during the day. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note too, that when these statistics and these studies come out that say, Americans are stagnant and people at work aren't moving enough, like that, they're talking not about us. Like that's not us.
Well, they may be talking about me now that I'm sitting in front of this computer, like making graphics, like with, Chef Katie Horne in it, or stuff like that, right? Making those things versus that. Now, I will have to say, for years, I struggled with, and I'm wearing this shirt, right? It says leg day. All right. And it's got a chicken leg on it, right? By the way, right? By the way, I am like 90% plant-based these days, but I love this shirt, right? I just love it.
I like this shirt, and I'm vegan.
Yeah. But my point being is, if you do a really hard leg day with squats and deadlifts and leg extensions and those type of things, right? And you're sore 2 days later, and it's on a Friday night. Or you did that workout on a Wednesday, and now it's all Friday or Saturday. You're like, you can't move. That totally is terrible, right? And so
I did CrossFit for a year. And that was me. I mean, I would just be dead for service.
Yeah, it's so hard to do that. So I've worked for years, almost a decade, really trying to nail down these super efficient workouts that I could get done in 20 minutes and still be able to like have this whole routine. So look at this. Look at exercise as a supplement for the lack of movement, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with supplements. I take vitamin C, vitamin D, B complex, sometimes selenium. I take iodine. I'm taking all these, magnesium every night before I go to bed. I'm okay with supplements. I love exercise. I love being able to lift heavy things and do, and I love being able to be more flexible and touch my toes and do yoga and what I call man yoga, right? I have this like routine I do, right? I love the fact that it helps my back feel better. My knees don't hurt, all those type of things, right? Men's hips are so tight, right? Yeah. Yeah. My son and I were joking yesterday, and I was like, that's a good man hack. And I looked up manhack.com and it was already taken. So I bought hombrehacks.com, right? So that may be sorry.
I can't with you today, Scott. I can't with you. Ombre hacks.
hombrehacks.com. All right. So here's my tip, right? I have to think, working in the restaurant industry, I've lost 40 pounds twice. The first time was age 35. The second time was age 40, right? And what I had to do is I had to create my daily routine that operated around my own natural rhythms, not a routine that operated around when the shift I was working. Okay. If I went to the hotel and I'm working breakfast, right, I don't eat till 2 o'clock, right? If I get up 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to eat till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's the first time that I'm allowed that anything is on the menu for me. That's it. That's my routine. And the next day I got to work a reception at night, and I show up, to work at noon because I'm going to be working till 2 o'clock in the morning. The first time I'm going to eat anything is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. And so my eating schedule is time restricted eating, right? Like just 2 days ago, my eating window was 2 hours and 7 minutes. I ate late and worked out and ate late. And then my eating window stopped, boom. And that's when I stopped eating. Right. And so the same thing applies no matter what shift you're working in the restaurant. If you're opening, and here's the thing, you got to find what your natural rhythms are. Are you an early bird? You're a night owl? What are you? I thrive in dinner restaurants because I'm a night owl, right? But you put me in a breakfast restaurant and I struggle. I got a headache till noon. Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning so I can do breathing exercises and 20-minute, highly functional exercise, workout, have a cup of coffee, make my way to work, do the commute, get there, make sure it's open, all those things. Drives me crazy, right? I love working dinner shifts, and lunch is okay, right? Right. But I don't do a lot of marketing to build lunch because I really like working dinner, right? Yeah. And so those are the things. What else did I write down here? Natural rhythms, right? Those things. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, you also got to find, other things, right? Make sure your hydration's good, right? And when I worked in California, those people in California, they live a healthy life, right? I got to tell you a funny story. I just sidebar. There's a guy outside the restaurant in Santa Monica, homeless guy, right? From Kentucky. His name was Bill, right? And he would direct traffic. Right? He was just funny. He would like step out on the Colorado Boulevard. He would stop traffic so you could pull out of the alley and all that stuff. He was 24 hours. He was like right there, right? And I walked down and I was like, hey, Bill, and homeless guy, right? And I was like, hey, Bill, I want to bring out a sandwich. How about a burger? Is that burger and fries? He goes, no, I'm watching my red meat. Homeless guy watching his red meat. It had to be California, right? It's like, right. And so I brought him out a fried chicken sandwich and he was okay with that. Right. But it was really fun. It's not as funny for you. You should have been laughing. That was a funny joke for me. Right.
I am laughing. I'm like, he should have gotten a veggie burger, but that's maybe
he was from Kentucky. Right. But it was an older guy. But my point being is this, right? My point is that getting your diet dialed in. Now, people who've worked with me know that I get stressed. I'm in the pantry and I'm foraging for nuts. I'm like looking for pistachios or cashews or something like that to eat and snack on. And because that's how I handle stress. I had this back then. I had a stress related eating deal, and that's how I gained weight. But I had to learn how to make good choices. Before it was the nuts. When I was 40 pounds overweight, it was chocolate chip cookies, right? Or a dessert or a sandwich or something with high carbs. And I was spiking all my insulin through this high glycemic foods. And I had to learn how to manage that and how to make good decisions when the choice came up. Right. Yeah. And so that's really the thing. And so if it's, for me, it was a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting, but it started with intermittent fasting. Keto didn't come. Keto was not a weight loss thing for me. So it was a cognitive high performance type thing for me. because I'd already lost the weight 4 years prior, right? So those are the things. The first thing you really need to do, to be honest with you, and it's more important than diet and exercise alone, is sleep, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just saying this because this book that I wrote, it's only 44 pages, right? 7 chapters. Number 1 is your mindset around sleep. Number 2 is finding out where your sleep time, or setting your bedroom up for success, right?
Mm-hmm.
The noise, the smell, your bedding, right? The colors of your walls, all those things are important. And then finding out what your sleep type is and tapping into your sleep type. If you're an early bird, or as Dr. Michael Bruce calls it, a lion, and normally get your first kill before dawn, you need to go work in a coffee shop or a breakfast restaurant. That's it, right? If you're a night owl, or what he calls a wolf, like me, you need to go work in a dinner restaurant. Or if you're younger and you want to work in a bar that closes late, go do that, right? And just, if somebody says that you can only be successful by getting up at 4:32 in the morning or 5 a.m. and you read that book and you're a night owl, just disregard it. It doesn't matter. Right. The next thing would be to do the things you need to do to get yourself the best night's sleep, and stop. Don't drink alcohol within 2 to 3 hours of going to bed. Don't eat food within 2 hours of going to bed. Don't do intense exercise within an hour of going to bed. Don't watch blue light or look at anything that has blue light within an hour or 2 of going to bed. And stop drinking caffeine 6 to 8 hours before your optimal bedtime. Right. Those are the things you need to do. Then it goes into breathing through your nose by taping your mouth shut. Then there's also just breathing exercises and journaling to clear your mind and all those type of things that you can do. So those are the 7 different chapters that are in this book. So sleep is by far most important thing, even more important than diet and exercise combined, especially if you're moving and on your feet for 8 of the 10 to 12 hours that you're working a day, right? Yeah. Unless you want to just get stronger, or you need to, like for me, if I don't work out, my knees start to hurt, right? And that has to do with, racing go-karts and all those type of things. But what else you got on that, on living a healthy life? And
no, for sure, sleep is definitely a big one. And kind of like what we talked about earlier, you have your beer to relax you, and that chemical care cycle. Just really, like you said, it's all mental. You've got to get in a good mindset that you want to be healthy, and it's so easy to just slip back into those bad habits because you're surrounded by so many of them and so many people that have like, you say you're a night owl. You're a night owl, but you're a responsible night owl. You come home after work. You take care of your body. There's a lot of people that are night owls that go out drinking till bar close, and just how it's difficult for a line cook, a younger 22, 23-year-old line cook, to be able to have that mental fortitude to say, no, I'm just going to have water or whatever it would be, or just go home. And I think that the restaurant industry for just decades and decades has really perpetuated that cycle of, me in that quote from Anthony Bourdain about how it's the last place for the misfits. And I'm like, bullshit. I hate that quote. I hate it because there's no reason that these people, and myself included, shouldn't get the help that they and we need to be successful humans. Just because you are, addiction runs rampant in the industry because it's such a easy career to have, to go out to the bars and drink. Drug use it's actually on the decline now, but I know in the 80s and 90s, it was everywhere. I remember the first kitchen I ever worked in, like I was 15, 16 years old. They had cocaine breaks, like, and I was like, what? Oh my God, what? And, and I didn't even know what it was. Like, I was so naive. I had no idea. To figure out why they kept going into the storage closet and coming out all jittery and happy, but obviously I know now.
I was 21 when I realized that being hungover on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was not fun. Right. Yeah. And I just started as a manager. So I mean, very early in my career, I was like, I don't drink on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. Mm-hmm. I just don't. I was off on Monday typically. So during the summer, because it was on a lake at a marina in South Carolina. And so Sundays were pretty big. And I was blessed, man. I've worked at some really cool restaurants that you didn't really have to do a lot of marketing for, right? And so when I started working in restaurants and hotels or things like that, and I started asking me questions about marketing, I was like, people just show up. I don't know what do you mean,
Yeah.
right? You know, and it's like, so I was spoiled in a lot of ways. We got a comment in from Tim. He said, if we're type 2 diabetic, your keto would have been first, then fasting is either way. That is a tremendously powerful duo to reverse type 2 diabetes. I'm doing this whole hog now, and I am starting to see results, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's something I think, without, intervention with, um, you know, for me back at age 40, or actually age 30, when my dad got cancer, I was probably well on my way to being type 2 diabetic. I was probably starting down that pathway. My grandmother was, my dad's mom was, and so, yeah, it's a tough thing, in our industry. And yeah, so yeah, it's pretty wild, when it comes to trying to live in a healthy life in this high stress environment. We get caught up in things. I've been listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza. I mean, he's pretty deep in the woo, right? I mean, I'm not, yeah, but what happens is, what he says is that there's a couple things. One, and I just put this in this new book my dear friend Malia Brown and I are writing together, and he says that we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are the same thoughts we thought the day before, right? The other thing he says is that we train the body, right? And then the body starts demanding these things from us. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, right? So, like, we're training the body that it needs caffeine at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, right? We train the body that it needs alcohol to calm down, and it needs coffee to, uppers and downers, right? We need, like, here's your upper, right? And then we need the downer, right? To do this, right? And the body starts depending on these things versus having these natural pieces of it. Since I've done the study to write the book about, sleep, I don't drink coffee after 12, right? It used to be like, well, I drink 2 cups of coffee a day, sometimes 3. Now it's like, if I get, busy, like if I, like after the live show, right? And I'm busy working on something for the next hour after the show's over, or hour and a half, and it's past 12 o'clock. I'm like, where's my second cup of coffee? I'm like, oh, it's past 12. I'm not going to have it. So I'm it's my one today, right? So So what happens is, I'm practicing what I'm preaching, in terms of that. And so it's you have to be independent of what your restaurant schedule is, and understand how these things are compounding and snowballing to make you live an unhealthy life, right?
For sure. And I think it's hard because of the industry. How do you tell an owner that you're a morning person? Like, as an exec chef, right? If I were to say to my owner, I can't work at night, I probably wouldn't get hired, So you almost have to just tailor yourself to it so much. And having that balance is really difficult to achieve. I would just say, people that are struggling with it, do the best you can. Every decision is an opportunity for a good one. And avoid that beer at the end of the night. Really try to eliminate your caffeine past noon, like you were saying. There's things that you can do. They're just difficult. And that chemical cycle, that chemical care that we continue to feed our body, is because there isn't a lot of info out there, especially for people in their early 20s, just coming out of college, or just getting industry in their late teens. There's not a lot of info out there on how to be healthy through this career. This is just starting to emerge with the GM podcast, and with the modern longevitarian, and the things that I'm doing. I'm writing a book just on my experiences in the industry, and it's incredibly cathartic. And I've noticed every chapter is a pattern. I'm basically making every chapter like a different restaurant I worked at, but it's like, okay, and then this happens, and then this happens. And so there just needs to be more info out there. So what we're doing, what you're doing, what I'm doing, and what thousands of other people are doing, is trying to get that information to the people that need it, those people on the front lines of the industry. And one thing that I had to learn is ask for a break. With COVID and having the masks, one of the things was, like, you get a 10-minute mask break. And I used mine. I would go out in the hallway and I would just sit down and kind of breathe for a second, because it was a different level of stress that we had to handle. It was no longer stress of service. It was stress of survival, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
But
go ahead.
To kind of segue into the next thing is culture. The industry is long overdue for change. It is long overdue for a new normal. And I think that we are on the very, very edge of that starting to happen and starting to make headway.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to really change the culture of the restaurant industry, right? Is really, there's a couple of things, right? We're working when people are eating, right? And so you may have grown up. Everybody grew up, for the most part, going to school and eating lunch at lunchtime and eating dinner at dinner time and those things. All of a sudden, you get in this industry, and now all of a sudden, you've trained your body to get back to your body being trained, right? Your body's trained to eat at a certain time, and now you're working during that time.
Yeah.
And then you have to fight against people like eating, overcooked steak or or something like that, right? In the dish pit, right? You have to, like, wait a minute, this is not what we do, right? These go in the garbage. We don't eat those, right? Or eating after a guest, right, that has left food that doesn't want to take it to go, which is like, do you really want hepatitis, right? I've seen that, and it's like, and overcoming those type of things, right? And as a leader, and those things are really kind of coaching your team on how to make it through these things. And I think that it takes true leadership, right? For that. And gosh, I've threatened to fire people on the spot for eating after guests, right? And it's like, I don't even know why you would ever do that, right? Gosh, Katie, it's been amazing. Yeah, I know you probably realized I was going to ask you to come on the show again at some point, right? So we're going to have to pick this up at some other time. We're just over an hour, right? And I know you got to go, and you got something else that's, and I appreciate your time. It's been amazing, right? It's been amazing.
We always have fun conversations.
Yeah.
We just dive in, man. No holds barred. I love it. Yeah, we'll definitely be back to talk about culture and just how it looks in the industry, because a lot of people don't know that servers make $213, and just the things that we go through. I think it's important because it's, like I said, it's long overdue.
Yeah, it is, right? And we got so many topics we can talk about, right? We can, at least talk about food, right? And today is, like what I call food F3 Friday, right? Food Friday. And we ended up talking about food a little bit, but not so much, right? But it's great having a chef on, someone as accomplished as you. I mean, I can't wait to see your book. And that's the first I've heard about that. And I love this format, this live format, right? Because
it's great.
Yeah, because it's not like a recorded podcast where you're like going, hey, if you don't like this question or don't understand it, I'll edit it out in post, or, editing out or those type of things, right? So it's really, really a cool format for this, and I love it. And I think today's show was pretty amazing. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate being here.
All right, so I'm going to close it down. You take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. All righty. That was an amazing conversation with executive chef Katie Horne. I can't wait to see what her book has to say when she comes out, and how that goes. And I really appreciate her time today. Amazing conversation, right? So we started out talking about, women and going up into management, and we ended up talking about how to live a healthy life, which is modern longevitarian, really in a high stress environment. And we'll be back on Monday. It's going to be a solo episode, and it's going to be, we'll be digging deep into, Mindful Monday, right? And how to make your Mondays the best, right? Because sometimes as a restaurant manager, if you're off on Sunday and Monday, like I've been for a number of years as a GM, you're showing up on Tuesday, midday, if you're working a dinner shift, or opening the restaurant that works lunch, and your boss may have been at work all the way through Monday and almost a half day on Tuesday, and you're coming in with an email list of to-dos that kind of take you off base, right? So there's so many things that you can work on and mitigate the stress. For me, it's transcendental meditation and those type of things. And again, if you didn't see about my book that I wrote on sleep, modernlongevitarian.com/sleep, and you can go check that out. And again, thanks to Chef Katie Horne for coming on the show. And I'll go and put all the places you can find her online, her website is chefkatiehorne.com, and she does amazing writing, and she's also on LinkedIn, and just some really, really cool things. So if it's your Friday, which it may not be, but if it is, have a great weekend.